here and welcome to the Bond Room Unlocked, whereby we take an item from this 27-year-old Bond collection and relate it to one of the Bond films that we know and love through the help of fan thoughts from the community and special guests too. So, Sean Connery hung up his Walther PPK in 1971 for EON Bond after his final outing in Diamonds Are Forever, which meant that his replacement, Roger Moore, stepped into his shoes in 1973 for the film Live and Let Die. Now, Fleming's second book featured the mysterious world of voodoo and occultism, so what better way to start Moore's tenure than making this very different Bond film his starting point? But where does voodoo originate from? Now, Louisiana voodoo, or New Orleans voodoo as it's sometimes known, is a religion that rose from the southern United States, and it grew from the 18th century and still can be seen being practiced in some instances in the Bayou today. Now, voodoo in film is very much portrayed as a dark practice, but it's actually far from it. If we look at the films The Vengeance of Zombies in 1973, The Occultist from 1988, The Ritual from 2002 and The Skeleton Key from 2005, all of these focus on voodoo, or hoodoo as the darker side is, in these films to convey its story. So, people love intrigue and mystery, so bringing these elements and combining them to the world of James Bond makes a very fun ride indeed. Let's hear from Bill and his thoughts on voodoo within this 1973 film.
Hi everyone, it's Bill Bokunic, your Bond fan from the United States. I've been asked to talk about the voodoo elements of Live and Let Die, and if I remember my history correctly, it was loosely based on Mr. Big character and Baron Samedi and all of the above. It was loosely based on Haiti and a president/dictator that was, I think Papa Doc was his name or something like that. Anyway, I think it makes the movie interesting. It certainly makes the characters interesting. It's based on something that was happening in real life, since the dawning of time, right? The dictators and presidents and what have you have used fear and various elements similar to control the masses, right? So, and I think the movie was depicted it very well.
Now, just to pick up where Bill left off there, during the 1970s, an ethnic subgenre was born, and it was called Black Exploitation. Now, Eunice Griffin, who was the president of the National Association of the Advancement of Coloured People, believed that the black community was being conveyed in negative, stereotypical ways during films of the 1970s or early 1970s. And some of these were Shaft from 1971, Blackula from 1972, The Mac 1973, and Three the Hard Way 1974, and also including Live and Let Die, our famous Bond film that we're having a look at. And if we couple this era with the mysteries of the voodoo and the hoodoo, and then of course we get our stock characters, our villainous stock characters for this film. Now, Bond has always kept up with the changing times, so I suppose what better way to start the Moore tenure was to start with a Bond hoodoo voodoo black exploitation movie. Bond's main adversary in this film is Mr. Big, Dr. Kananga, and is played by the late actor Yaphet Kotto. He is a drug crime lord and a dictator of a fictitious Caribbean island called San Monique, and he uses voodoo scare tactics to protect his illicit drug smuggling business. But how does he do this? Let's take a closer look. If we look at the character of Rosie Carver, CIA agent and undercover employee of Dr. Kananga. She's played by Gloria Hendry, who was the first black female to be Bond's love interest. She's not the most proficient of agents, and she seems to scare really easily, firstly at a snake and then at a voodoo hat. And she's always looking over her shoulder, and is ultimately killed by one of the voodoo scarecrows that she is visibly scared of. superstition costs her life. And that's something that we've seen before in the franchise in Dr. No in 1962. Quarrel is doomed to be killed by the mysterious dragon. Remember, it's Dr. No's tank with a flamethrower.
It's going to be a beautiful day. A beautiful day. Words spoken in the churchyard, such as the one I'm in now, by Baron Samedi, the chief voodoo enforcer of Dr. Kananga's criminal and political empire in Live and Let Die. Baron Samedi is a ridiculous character, on the face of it. He wears dandified costumes, outlandish hats, and has a general camp demeanour. Yet somehow, thanks to Geoffrey Holder's deep baritone laugh and cat-like, stealth-like, ghost-like moves, he holds an unusual and deadly place around the periphery of the film, having a strange control over the people who take part in his sinister dance rituals. And when we think Bond has dispatched him at the end, lo and behold, at the end credits of the film, there he is, laughing demonically on the front of a train as it speeds into the distance. Baron Samedi is truly the Lord of the Undead, and he takes an otherwise standard blaxploitation influenced action thriller into supernatural territory that the Bond films have very rarely been in before or since.
The character of Baron Samedi, played by the late Geoffrey Holder, as Peter just stated, and he's one of my favourites within the film. Now, Baron Samedi does come from the mysteries of voodoo and hoodoo lore. He is generally seen wearing a top hat and coattails and depicts a skeletal form. He generally can be found at the crossroads of death between the living and the dead. And what I like about this character in the film is that Kananga employs an ordinary man to portray this living voodoo legend, to install fear into his followers, thus protecting his opium fields. Now, Holder portrays this character with such poise and grace, full of mystery and foreboding, and at 6'6" in height and with a booming laugh, he really adds to the character and creates this imposing figure. The piece of memorabilia I want to share with you today in connection with our film is this pop vinyl figure of Baron Samedi. And it's my favourite pop vinyl figure because it's just so different. You know, you get a lot of figures repeated, Daniel Craig in various different suits. But this one is such an iconic character, and it just depicts Geoffrey Holder's envision of the character really well. We've got the here on the picture with the top hat and the face paint used for the skeletal form. And inside there, let's just pick him up so you can have a look. And he's got his machete, which he uses towards the end of the film, and it's such a fun pop vinyl figure, and I really hope they make more of the more iconic figures as we go on.
Tarot cards play an important role in furthering the theme of the occult in Live and Let Die. In one memorable scene, Bond is sent an upside down Queen of Cups, which indicates that Rosie Carver is a terrible actress and cannot be trusted with anything further than screaming or snogging. However, probably my favourite scene involving the tarot is the deleted one involving Kananga, Solitaire, Teehee and Whisper enjoying a convivial game of Snap following a hard day's villainy.
Thanks, Chris. Now, voodoo, as Chris has mentioned, was carried on further through the film through the use of tarot cards, which was an interesting idea. And it was used by a character called Solitaire, who was played by the lovely Jane Seymour in the film. And her character, the psychic medium, is in the employment of Dr. Kananga, and she uses the tarot cards to aid him in his business dealings. Now, tarot cards derive from the 15th century, but it was the 18th century that they came into fruition, and decks were then starting to be used to read the future and ultimately passed over to occultists groups. Now, in the film, Solitaire has one drawback to her abilities. She must remain a virgin. And of course, Bond being Bond, he soon puts pay to that, and Dr. Kananga finds out and has no more use for Solitaire and passes her over to Baron Samedi for sacrifice because her powers have been tainted.
As overall, from my perspective of Live and Let Die, it hasn't aged well. I recently watched it just after No Time to Die came out, and was it was a little bit disappointing. It seems to have gone down on my list of favorite Bond movies. It was up until then, it was probably my second or third favorite Roger Moore movie, and it's probably fourth or something like that now. But it made it interesting. It's kind of cool. I'd be curious to hear everyone else's thoughts. And again, thanks for the opportunity. And over to you.
So that's it for this mysterious episode focusing on the voodooism of Live and Let Die. If you have enjoyed it, then please give it an MI6 stamp of approval and click on the notifications below. And then why not subscribe? The cards say you must. You don't want to miss any further missions because we have some fabulous guests and topics coming up. You can also find the Bond Room Unlocked on Facebook, where we have over 1,000 members now, and on Instagram with more Bond content. I would like to thank my minions of today, Bill Bokunic, Peter Sharples and Chris Oatten, for their Live and Let Die wisdom. And I'd like to thank you for your continued support. Until next time, thanks for joining me at the Bond Room Unlocked.
Ha 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 ha!